Welcome back to Age of Empires 2. Last time, we learned how to use villages to gather resources. This time we kind of learn how to combine economic and military strategies with training the troops. Let's go.
In villages throughout the Highlands, there is grim talk of skirmishes between Scotland and England. We lost the city of Dunbar this week. Scottish defenders broke ranks and fled. The English have an army that is larger and better trained. To compete with them, we are going to need new recruits to pick up the spear, sword, or bow. We must remake these shepherds into soldiers. We will need many soldiers to defend our homeland. We'll start by creating villagers. Click your town center.
Wait a second. I think you just cut yourself off, hammy Scottish narrator. Anyway, we're back here with the town center, a bunch of villagers, they're all male this time. And firstly, well, we're going to learn how to create new units. Mainstay of any real-time strategy game, I'm sure. So, we have to click our town center first.
Then click the Create Villager button in the lower left corner of the screen.
Well, that's simple enough. You might notice a couple of other buttons here.
It takes time for a villager to appear.
So,
if your town center is selected, you can see the progress in the status area at the bottom of your screen.
You know, may as well just click one. So yeah, you'll see the percentage down there. This bell here, that's the town bell button I was talking about earlier. It's useful if your town gets raided early on. So as you can see here, this villager is coming along.
Good job! The villager has appeared next to your town center. Now, create another village. You need additional housing to support your population. To build a house, click a villager. Click the Buildings button, click the Build House button, then click where you want to build the house.
This is where we run into a bit of a snag. And yes, that sound, that population breach sound.
More than one villager builds a building, it will go up faster.
You know, let's go ahead and do what he says for the time being. I can talk while he's building. So, basically yes, you need to build houses to support your population. As you can see in this top corner of the screen there, well, the tutorial guy's going to explain it in a few seconds. This house is almost up.
Good job! Try building another house.
Yes, we will need to build more than one house, thankfully. As you can see there, we can now support 10 populations, and our town centre should have begun progress on the next villager.
At the top of the screen shows your current supportable population.
And hey, new villager, let's get into work on building this house. They all seem to be male this time. Interesting.
Other buildings are made just like houses. Try building a barracks. The barracks is a military.
What he means there is we have to select the sword button here, which is the military buildings, and then go to the barracks. You'll notice we can also build outposts here, and walls, actually, which are not really going to be too helpful, but you know what? Just for fun, I'm going to have a guy here build an outpost. I wonder if the narrator ever comments on that. Anyway, outposts are extremely cheap and are built very, very quickly, but provide a pretty wide line of sight. I'm just doing this just because I want to show, you know, how to build stuff, I guess. That was much less of a line of sight than I was expecting. I am disappointed. Anyway, these four are going to go ahead and build me a barracks. Where are you? There it is. Barracks costs 175 wood. So let's you all go build this barracks here, and that should go up relatively quickly. Probably don't need any more villagers. We already have just about enough resources we need. So yes, as you can see, you need to build more houses to keep supporting your population. And that does get a bit annoying eventually.
Barracks complete. Now you can create soldiers. Click the barracks, then click the Create Militia button.
So,
selecting different buildings or units gives you different options in the lower left corner of the screen.
Yeah, so as you can see, with Villager, we get the build options. There's also this repair option, which is handy if any of your buildings are damaged. Yes, the only way to restore health to a building is to have a villager, is to actually task a villager to repairing it. I can't really show this off here. This also costs resources, but anyway. If I click this, we have the option to create militia. If I click here, we have the option to create villages. We also have that interesting option down here that I'm pointing over. We'll find out about that in the next scenario, but for the time being, let's create a militia. It takes a little while for them to appear, and these guys are looking very bored. You go over there. Come on, militia.
That's one militia unit. Create 3 more, and you'll have enough soldiers to protect this area and win the scenario. Click the barracks and quickly click the Create Militia button 3 more times to make 3 soldiers in a row.
This is teaching you about queuing up units. Now, interesting trivia about this with regards to the series history, you could not do this in the original Age of Empires 1 until the expansion pack. Yes, I am not kidding. You needed an expansion pack in order for the functionality of queuing up multiple units to actually work. Yeah, one of the reasons why I don't intend to play the first game. Also, if we see our militia, we can move him around. And you might notice his stats are a little weaker than the other one. Now, again, you might notice a whole lot of buttons here. Those will be explained a bit later. And I guess I should mention, yes, as you can see, we now have... Stupid scrolling. 7 out of 15 total population slots used up. Yes, military units use the same amount of population slots as villagers do, so balancing your population between villagers and soldiers is a pretty vital thing you need to think about. Early on in the game, you generally need much more villagers than you do soldiers, unless you're planning on going the Zerg Rush route, but I don't really approve of that whole thing, so I can't really comment there. And later on, yeah, you might want to just be careful how many villages you create, because that'll leave less room for an army. But again, no matter whether you're going for soldiers or villagers, you need houses. Your town centre also supports a few population, I believe it's the same as a house, but yes, you need houses. The more houses you have, the more population you can support. And that's why gathering wood is very important early on. So gathering wood and food are the 2 things you really need to focus on early on in the game. Food to make more villages to get resources faster, and wood so you can build houses so you can support those extra villages. But anyway, I've stalled this long enough. Let's go ahead and make 3 more militia. You might notice that militia actually costs 60 food and 20 gold, so you actually do need to gather gold before you can start making military, well, at least for the most part. And 3 militia. So these 3 will come out in a row. Now, I'm going to show you something in the tutorial that I didn't tell you. If you right-click an area on the map, you'll place a flag there. Watch what happens when the militia comes out. See how the militia went all the way to that flag? This is called setting a gather point. You can do this for the town centre as well, and I believe they'll explain this later. But this is a very useful feature. If you want any units that you're producing to immediately gather at a specific location, just right-click a location after selecting the building. It's a very, very useful feature. Now, come on, other militia. I know you want to be trained. Come on, where are you? There you are.
Now that you have a few soldiers, you'll be able to defend this area against English attacks.
Not that we'll have any in this scenario because we are victorious already. Yeah, that was quick.
Now that we have militias stationed across the border, the English have slowed their raids. But facing Longshanks' army will be another matter. The wicked English king has yet to bring his famous longbows to bear. Our militias could only get us so far. We are going to need more advanced weapons.
And that's what we'll be dealing with next time on Research and Technology. So I guess I'll see you then. And now it's time for Ye Olde Fact of the Day. The militia. Militia are pretty much your bog standard basic infantry units, and they're pretty much the starting point for just about any army. Militia are, in fact, the very first military units that you have available, and in fact are the only military units available in the Dark Age. and that's probably the only thing they have going for them. Yep. Militia are only very slightly better in combat than villagers, and that's really not that great. When asked in a developer interview, there actually was a few very interesting developer Q&As that you can find on a website called AOE Haven, I believe. Go and check them out, because some of the developer Q&As actually lead to some quite interesting questions. But when asked at one point, what's the point of using militia to attack in the Dark Age, the developer's response was basically, well, they're better than villagers. Yeah, that's pretty much the main thing they have going for them. They're at least better than villagers. Not by much, but still. Yes, again, the fact that militia are the only unit available in the Dark Age, I keep saying this because there isn't really that much that militia are good for other than the fact that they are the only soldier that you have in the First Age. Meaning that if you're wanting to attack the enemy, harass their villages a little bit, then militia are really the only way to go. Thing is, I would recommend sending relatively large numbers of them, seeing as you can see, as is quite clear, or as will be quite clear later on, militia die very quickly to a town centre that's been garrisoned with villagers, so yep, you will need quite a few of them, and yes. Good thing though is that militia are quite cheap, very cheap actually. They do cost gold, and that's why you will need to gather a little bit of gold if you want some semblance of military, but it's not quite as important as food and wood are early on. I'm guessing that gold cost is really added there just to slightly discourage rushing with them early on, because at least you have to dedicate a little bit of effort to farming gold, mining gold, whatever, in order to actually get militias out there. There are some civilizations that can actually rush with militia early on quite well, most infamously the Huns in deathmatch mode, which, believe me, we'll talk more about deathmatch Huns later on, but one of the notorious game breakers of this game. But anyway, they have a certain thing that, well, lends itself to Zerg rushing, but the Goths are another good civilization for rushing because their infantry are created faster than normal, but they tend to, they can get really good at rushing later on, but, yeah. So, yeah, that's basically it for the militia. They're better than villagers, that's all I can really say, but you've got to make do with them, pretty much. And now it's time for the history lesson. Local peasants and works called up for military duty in times of emergency made up the militia. These temporary soldiers were usually equipped with second-rate weapons and armour. They returned to their normal occupations when the emergency had passed. Levies of militia were often used as second-line troops when great lords assembled their vassals for a campaign. The militia were available for less demanding fighting and often tasks in support of the main army. England's Harold Godwinson stood his ground in 1066 at Hastings with only his vassals. If he had fallen back and called up the Anglo-Saxon militia, known as the Fyrd, some historians believe he would not have lost his kingdom to William the Conqueror. For much of the Dark Ages, there are only small professional armies in the West. Militia led by strong leaders and their few retainers carried on much of the Dark Age fighting.